While Washington was distracted by the latest headline, while cable news argued over immigration talking points and tariff slogans, Ottawa didn't rage. Canada didn't scream. There was no dramatic press conference, no teary appeals to fairness. Instead, they did something colder. They executed a plan. Mark Carney just signed a document that effectively ends the America First monopoly on North American resources. And the worst part for the White House is this. They didn't even realize the meeting was happening until the ink was dry. This isn't a tariff spat anymore. This isn't a trade skirmish. This is a divorce. And the bill is about to land on your wallet, your 401k, and your grocery bill. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, why it matters, and what comes next. We'll look at the market signals Washington can't spin, the logistics that show Canada is already rerouting, and the strategic math that allowed a quiet central banker to outmaneuver a loud political brand without raising his voice. Because history is shifting in real time, and if you live in the United States, you need to brace for impact. So let's cut through the noise. What happened today? At 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, while Washington slept, Prime Minister Mark Carney's office released a joint statement with the European Union and Japan. The headline name is bland on purpose, the Critical Supply Security Pact. It sounds like paperwork. It sounds like bureaucracy. That's exactly the camouflage. But if you read the fine print, it's a geopolitical earthquake. For decades, the United States had what you could call preferred access to Canadian resources: oil, lumber, aluminum, and most importantly, critical minerals. The ingredients that go into your phone, your electric vehicle battery, and advanced defense systems. It was never written as a single sentence, but it was understood. America eats first. This morning, that unwritten rule was deleted. Under the new pact, Canada commits to reserve 40% of its critical mineral output for the European Union and Japan for the next 10 years. In exchange, those partners provide massive upfront infrastructure investment, and here's the kicker, a guaranteed price floor independent of the US dollar. Read that again. Independent of the US dollar. That single line changes everything. It means Canada has locked in buyers and pricing that Washington can't pressure with threats and can't easily disrupt with a tariff headline. Trump's favorite weapon, "I'll tax you if you don't obey," loses bite when the goods aren't aimed at the US market anymore. Trump spent months treating a G7 ally like a vassal state, threatening 25% tariffs, then hinting at 50%, demanding loyalty without offering respect. He thought he was squeezing Canada. He thought he found a weak point. He was wrong. He wasn't squeezing them. He was pushing them out the door. And Carney's move is the trade equivalent of this. A landlord threatens to evict a tenant, only to learn the tenant already bought a mansion down the street and moved out overnight. The leverage is gone. Trump woke up expecting to bully Canada into submission at the negotiating table. But when he arrived, the chair was empty because Canada isn't negotiating for access to the US market the way it used to. They've begun replacing it. Now you might be thinking, is this just political theater? Is this exaggerated? Let's look at the receipts. Receipt number 1, the market reaction. At the open this morning, major US EV and battery-linked manufacturers dropped hard, down 8%, down 12%, down 15%. Why? Because investors can read. They saw the Brussels Pact and understood the supply chain these companies count on just tightened. If Canadian lithium and nickel flow to Europe and Japan under long-term commitments, it isn't flowing to Michigan on the same terms. Markets don't need a speech, they need a contract. And a contract is what Carney delivered. Meanwhile, look north. The Toronto Stock Exchange showed strength in mining and energy. The market was voting, and the market was signaling that Canada just improved its bargaining position. Receipt number 2, the logistics at the border. Reports from the Ambassador Bridge, the busiest land crossing in North America, show unusual patterns. Normally, slowdowns there are framed as Canada's problem. Today, the friction is showing up on the American side, with US agencies rumored to be tightening inspections for strategic goods. But here's the detail that matters. The trucks aren't there like usual. We're seeing indications of roughly a 20% drop in commercial volume heading south. That's not a strike. That's not a blockade. That's redirection. It means freight is being rerouted to rail, to ports, to Montreal and Vancouver, east and west, not south. Receipt number 3, the leaked memo. An internal U.S. Department of Commerce memo surfaced about an hour ago. We can't display the entire document here, but one line says everything. Current inventory levels of processed nickel allow for 45 days of production. Alternative sourcing from Indonesia will take 6 months to secure. 45 days. Trump behaves like time is unlimited. He acts like Canada is desperate and will wait for his terms. The memo says the opposite. American factories have a countdown clock. If inputs tighten, production slows. If production slows, layoffs follow. And Carney timed his move as inventories ran thin. This is what happens when you put a reality TV dominant style against a central banker's systems thinking. One side cares about optics, the other side cares about leverage. Trump has been playing checkers. Carney just changed the board. To understand how we got here, you have to understand Trump's operating model, dominance. In his worldview, every interaction is zero-sum. For him to win, someone else must lose. And because the U.S. economy is larger, he assumes he can dictate terms forever. He treats fear as currency. For the past year, he used fear against Canada, threatening the Auto Pact, insulting leadership, floating border militarization over asylum rhetoric, framing a partner as a problem. He assumed politeness was weakness. That was the fatal miscalculation. Canada has options. Trump's instincts are stuck in an older world where the American consumer is the sun and everyone else orbits. But it's 2026. Europe is hunting for secure inputs. Asia is hungry for supply. Global buyers want stable sources and they will pay for reliability. Carney sees that map clearly. So while Trump shouted threats, Carney made calls, and he built exits. And that's why tariffs don't work the way Trump thinks they do here. If Canada is already committed to send materials elsewhere, you can't punish them with a tax at the U.S. border. You can't tax what you're no longer buying. That's the moment Washington loses leverage, when the supplier finds alternative customers before the threat is executed. You can already hear the panic. Trump's post this morning read like frantic caps lock outrage, calling Carney a traitor, calling partners scammers, trying to rally his base. That isn't the tone of a man who is winning. That's the tone of someone realizing the target has moved. And here's the part Trump can't fix with a phone call or a rally: contracts are signed. Infrastructure money is committed. Shipping and rail capacity gets booked. The pivot becomes legal and binding. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal on demand. Now let's talk about Carney, because his profile explains his strategy. Carney ran the Bank of Canada through the 2008 financial crisis. Then he ran the Bank of England. He is not a vibes politician. He's a technician. He thinks in systems, incentives, risk, and optionality. When Trump threatened Canada, Carney didn't rage. He went quiet. That silence was the warning. Because Carney understands sovereignty in a way Trump doesn't. Sovereignty isn't about shouting about flags. Sovereignty is about optionality. It's the power to say no, and to say no to the United States, you need alternatives already built. Carney's bet is simple. The world needs what Canada has: fresh water, uranium, potash, oil, lumber, critical minerals. He's signaling, we're open for business, but not open for bullying. This isn't anti-Americanism. It's risk management. Carney is building a firewall against U.S. political volatility by ensuring Canada is never trapped in a single market dependency again. And that's why the move is so hard to counterattack. He isn't burning bridges in public. He's signing agreements in private. He's doing business under the rules the free market world claims to respect. How do you fight that? You can't accuse a spreadsheet of being unpatriotic. You can't sanction a contract without also sanctioning your own supply chain. So why does this matter to you, the viewer? If you're in Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, why care about a pact signed in Brussels? Because Canada touches your daily life. Affordable electricity? Canada supplies a major share in parts of the U.S. grid. Affordable housing? Canadian lumber builds American homes. Affordable fuel? Canadian oil feeds American refineries. Stable manufacturing? Canadian minerals and metals are upstream inputs for factories you depend on. If this divorce widens, the costs show up at your kitchen table. If Canada prioritizes selling oil into other markets, U.S. Midwest refineries feel pressure and gas prices rise. If Canada prioritizes aluminum shipments to Europe, input costs rise for construction materials, packaging, and vehicles. Inflation, the thing everyone hates, can roar back, not because the Fed made a mistake, but because the cheap, predictable northern supply chain became less predictable. And it's bigger than money. It's about security. For generations, Americans slept well knowing the northern border was quiet and friendly. Turning your closest ally into a competitor doesn't just change trade flows, it reshapes the strategic map. Imagine Canada choosing neutrality, not hostility, simply neutrality. Imagine external players building infrastructure because US firms were pushed out. Imagine defense contractors elsewhere getting first pick of Canadian inputs. That's not a fantasy. That is what diversification looks like once trust is damaged. There's an image circulating that sums it up. An empty chair in a Washington working group meeting where Canada always sat. Through wars, recessions, and presidencies, Canada showed up. Today they didn't. That empty chair is louder than any speech. It says, "We don't need to be here anymore." Carney didn't raise his voice. He removed his presence. So where do we go from here? This is the dangerous part. Uncharted territory. Scenario A, escalation. Trump feels humiliated and lashes out, slamming extreme tariffs, threatening border disruption, turning economic policy into ego policy. That path risks slamming the US auto ecosystem fast and rattling markets into recession fears. Scenario B, corporate revolt. Major CEOs, autos, aerospace, manufacturing, push back and demand de-escalation because supply chains can't survive a prolonged shock. This is what Carney is banking on, that American business leaders will force the political temperature down. Scenario C, permanent break. Even if this gets patched next week, the lesson sticks. Canada will keep diversifying. More ports, more rail capacity, more agreements. The era of exclusive US access is over, because exclusivity requires trust, and trust was the first casualty. Trump promised to put America first, but by treating his closest ally like an enemy, he's accelerating the moment America stands alone. The next few days will be critical. You're going to hear a lot of noise, claims of betrayal, calls for retaliation, demands for loyalty. When you hear that, remember this. Canada didn't attack out of nowhere. Canada responded to months of pressure and instability by building alternatives. They proved they're a sovereign nation, not a 51st state. Carney proved something else. You can stand up to a bully if you're calm enough, smart enough, and prepared enough. Now the question isn't what Canada will do. They already made their move. The question is whether America can admit it miscalculated, and whether Donald Trump is capable of choosing stability over pride. If the answer is no, then the border you thought was just a line on a map becomes a very real and very expensive wall. This story is moving fast. We're monitoring ports, markets, and Washington's response. Tell me in the comments, did Carney go too far, or was this the only language Trump understands? Is Canada right to diversify, or does this break something that can't be repaired? And if you want ongoing updates as this develops, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, pricing, and official statements as this story evolves. We'll keep tracking contracts, shipments, periods,